Welcome to the Cooperation in Education podcast series. In this limited series, we will dive into the future of higher education and explore how cooperations can transform learning experiences. This podcast series is part of the Cooperation in Education Knowledge Gateway project, in short, the CiE Gateway project. CiE Gateway is an international project that aims to support educators in better preparing their students for the dynamic and challenging world of work. We do that by 1. Encouraging multidisciplinary and external collaborations, 2. Fostering engagement with industry and society for educational practice, and 3. Equipping academic staff with tools and resources to enhance education delivery. The CiE Gateway project unites partners from 4 countries across Europe: IMTBS from France, FH Münster from Germany, UIN for the Netherlands, and Young from Finland. The CiE Gateway project is funded by the European Union. Views and opinions expressed are, however, those of the authors only and do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or the Finnish National Agency for Education. Neither the European Union nor the granting authority can be held responsible for them. Hi, welcome to our first episode of the Cooperation in Education podcast series. I'm your host, Maynara Furquim. I come from Brazil and I'm a research associate at FH Münster, and I work in the CiE Gateway project with our great international team. In today's episode, we will discuss the topic Exploring Collaborative Projects, Transforming Higher Education Together. And for that, I have Dominik with me. Hi Dominik, welcome. Could you introduce yourself to our listeners, please?
Yeah, hi Maynara, thank you very much. I'm Dominik, I'm also a research associate here at the FH Münster. And also a lecturer. I've worked previously as a product manager in a company before revisiting the university to follow my PhD project. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. And as you said, you are a lecturer also. And knowing FH Münster as a student from my side, I would assume that you have already experienced this cooperation, this collaboration in education, right?
Yeah, definitely. We've various formats here at the FH Münster that we do where we cooperate with different partners. So yeah, definitely.
Great. Thank you, Dominik. Now I think we can jump into today's topic, right?
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I'm definitely eager to introduce our topic. Let's go.
Perfect. So today, we'll be giving our listeners an overview of what kind of data the CiE project has collected over the last couple months. So we'll cover first the general topic of collaboration in education, what it is, what we understand under the term. And then we are talking a bit about a survey which we conducted among students to better understand their perception of what is collaboration in education, how it was their experience there so far. And after that, we go into the interviews. We talk to experts in the field of education, and then we want to share a bit of the first insights and what we are going to do with all this data going forward and from now. And then in the end, we just wrap up with the episode with an outlook on the future episodes and further information interested listeners might find benefit in it. So, well, to be honest, this is the most fun part of the project that we've worked on far, was just research, and now we can share stuff, which is always exciting. So what is collaborative projects? Can you explain to us a bit, Dominik?
Yeah, so when we talk about collaborative or cooperative projects, we tend to refer to projects where 2 or more parties come together and contribute. This contribution can be either based on knowledge or on technology. And the specific outcome of such projects might depend on the parties involved, of course. This can be either within universities, across faculties or departments, so intra-organizational collaboration or cooperation, or between a university and an external entity, such as a company, a non-profit, or a governmental institution.
And that is definitely completely relevant because when, for example, business faculty with an engineering faculty join forces to collaborate, then there is the end part of what we just explained, knowledge or technology exchange, right?
Exactly. There are various forms of these collaborations, and we will go into more detail on different settings in a future episode. But just briefly, the collaborations we are looking at range from projects run by students together with or for an external partner, like a company, as part of a course, to the co-development of new courses and whole study programs where different universities from across Europe come together to create something completely new, something innovative to further the educational perspective.
Perfect. So really a lot of perspectives that we want to bring to everyone here. But one might ask, why are these types of projects so important from higher education? And that is the key question we want to start with. So nowadays, the educational methodologies employed to achieve effective learning outcomes are being questioned because it seems that they are not suitable or they simply do not address today's educational challenges. While the demand for high-quality teaching in higher education is really increasing. However, at the same time, many educators struggle or are not aware of new forms of teaching or of collaboration education. With this background, we went out and talked to experts in the field. But first, let's move to our second part of today, the student survey. So, how do our end benefactors perceive these collaborations? We conducted a survey where over 200 international students participated. The survey was part of a student project where 3 bachelor students, led by 1 master student from the FH Münster, had a task to better understand collaboration in education and provide recommendation for this podcast series and our overall CiE Gateway project going forward. The students distributed the survey among all 3 partners universities and beyond. And guess what? Based on the survey, 49% of the students have never participated in a collaborative project.
We were not really expecting that, right? That's quite a big number. Even though it was explained in the survey what collaborative projects are, and 90% of those who never participated in a collaborative project understand the concept, it might mean that there is a lack of information of these types of projects in higher education. But most likely, there may be a lack of opportunities for students to engage with such projects, making them miss out on a lot of benefits and valuable outcomes, as also mentioned by the students, right?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the questions that we asked the students was about the benefits and outcomes they perceive were gained during such projects or learning experience. And one of the most common answer was skills such as project management, networking, teamwork, but also real life experience. So they really wanted to have this real setting perspective. And what is even more important to mention is that many of these skills and experience are not taught in typical lecture settings. So they wanted this real life, how work actually works out there. So these collaborative projects play a crucial role in providing this hand-on real-world experience that the students wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah, out of the 94 students that never participated in a cooperative project but would be interested to do so, more than 80%, 77, selected real-life work experience as their most expected outcome. So really working together with real-life partners, so what you also just referred to. Closely followed by 74 participants that selected networking and relationships to be very, very important for them. These results are very intriguing for us, right? As it appears that most students perceive building their soft skills as nearly as crucial as their so-called hard skills. Moreover, it shows that students are actively seeking experiences to enhance their interpersonal skills. These can prepare the students for their future work life, where they will need to adapt to new circumstances in group settings always. Maynara, why don't you let our listeners know on what types of collaborations students sought out?
Sure. So one common form of collaborating with industry, which is also sometimes integrated as an important part in study programs, for example, are internships. However, the numbers in our survey are quite low. So only 36 students actually had an experience with internship compared to 70 and 68 of students that who had participated in collaborative research projects or workshops. So the format students select the least were cross-disciplinary electives, meaning different departments in the same university working together. So engineering and business, for example. So overall, 30 collaborations were with other faculties and 56 with other universities and 90 with outside organizations, including both companies and non-profit organizations. But of course, when multiple organizations with different circumstances and ways of working come together, there's a bit of friction, right?
Yeah, of course, always. That's indeed a very, very important point, often impacting the willingness to and experience of participating in such learning experiences, both from the side of the students, but also, of course, from the side that are running these collaborations from the educator's perspective. Maybe 2 quotes from our survey are a very good point to start here. So first quote, I did have one really good experience and one really bad due to the communication with our mentor and professor. Quote end. And second quote, I participated in one project in collaboration with one company in which I was required to make market research of one specific country for the company to take into consideration whether to enter to this country and if so, when. Although it was an interesting task, the feedback given by professors for the presentation was confusing. Quote end. These quotes reflect the negative points that often impact collaborations for students or cooperations for students. Communication, time management are rated as having a high or very high negative impact by 32 and 45% respectively. Of course, if you as a student do not have enough time, as you might be already struggling with other projects or courses and lack the necessary skills to prioritize and manage your tasks efficiently, then of course you might be overwhelmed by more stuff, aka collaborations. Unsurprisingly, lack of time was mentioned most often by those students who had never participated in a collaboration before and wouldn't be interested in doing so in the future. I believe a lot of students can relate, and also for educators that have run such courses before, they won't be surprised. That lack of time management was the most significant challenge in students' experiences, followed by limited resources or funding and lack of communication between stakeholders. In these cases, we need to ask ourselves, where does this challenge come from actually? And here I mean specifically the lack of time management, because the other 2 are external factors, right? Might the projects be so time-consuming, or are the students not aware of how to work on their tasks for them not to waste time?
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. It's everything about the perspective, right? And for that, I want to add something. So these points are likely connected, because if students are unsure about their tasks, then this might be linked to a lack of effective communication between the educators, students, and even further involved parties. So to conclude, based on our survey, many students are interested in collaborations as part of their studies, which is great, both within and across university boundaries, and they are perceiving the experience as valuable to build further soft and hard skills for their future and their careers. And they also acknowledge the importance of such projects for their future. How about we move on to the interviews now, where experienced educators share their stories of successful collaborations.
Let's do it.
All right, let's dive into our interviews. Dominik, would you like to explain what the project team did, please?
Yeah, sure. So all 4 partner organizations, so IMTBS, YAMK, UAN, and we at the FH Münster of the CiE Gateway project, we interviewed multiple experts in the field of collaboration, cooperation, and education. We wanted to understand how they are implementing these collaborative projects, what formats they choose and why, what their respective objectives and outcomes were. We also inquired about challenges they faced, best practices they identified. Lastly, we sought out helpful tools and resources, protocols that interested educators could test going forward. So the interviews came, of course, quite naturally from the 4 countries where we are based, so Germany, Finland, the Netherlands, and France, but also further European countries, providing a broad view on cooperations taking place across Europe, where we really leveraged both, of course, our networks, but also went beyond our networks and tried to get new perspectives on cooperation in education. Spoiler alert, some of our experts will feature in future episodes of this podcast series, where we'll go into more detail on certain elements of their approaches to cooperation in education.
Exactly. So today we will give you an overview of our findings before we make our deep dives in the subsequent episodes. We collected a broad range, not only regionally, but also content-wise, with collaborations ranging from interdisciplinary teaching over challenge-based learning concept, bringing in external challenge from partners, to innovation and entrepreneurship step-ups, collaborating with industry networks or society. Of course, depending on the scope and complexity of these various collaboration types, the number of partners and different roles differ. However, some roles are always present and especially important for the overall success of collaborations in education.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about cooperation in education, so one party will always be present, the educators. In most cases, they have to fulfill multiple roles. They are facilitators, coaches during the cooperation for the other participants, especially for the students most of the time. Also, they act as organizers and planners, setting everything up and bringing the participants together. Lastly, some act as innovators and change makers, bringing new concepts of teaching into the mix, inspiring colleagues and students, and fostering new collaborative relationships with new partners. Thereby, it seems educators are like the intermediary between universities and the third party. Literature on UBC or University Business Cooperations highlights the relevance of educators as well, being crucial in establishing mechanisms to define mutual objectives, facilitate and mitigate rising uncertainties. Quite an extensive mix of roles and also connected skills required in motivated, collaborative educators.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, educators plays a decisive role in any collaboration. And we could also add fundraiser to the list of their roles to play. Based on our interviews, the financial resources or financial support given to work on these collaborative cooperation projects plays a significant role in these projects.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Particularly when we discuss international cooperations, where expenses often surpass those of conventional arrangements. Financial assistance or funding become essential due to geographical distances. Of course, you have to travel. This brings us to the second part that is always involved, at least passively, in cooperations in education. The higher education institution that is based, or where the cooperation is based. The role of the respective organization is predominantly of a resource provider and supporter through existing structures, processes, and available services.
Yeah, definitely. We will touch upon this soon again when talking about the barriers typically faced by the educators. But maybe let's first finish the list of roles, right?
Yeah, sure. So the two remaining parties that are involved or not involved, depending on the format, are students. They don't always have to be involved, right? But in a lot of cases they are. And external entities such as companies, non-governmental organizations, or society. They either actively take part in co-developing new courses or to take some educational or mentorship role, guiding students and providing networking opportunities, which we learned is what students are looking for, right? And the students themselves are very responsible to actively engage with and participate in the project, often being set up as a team or in multiple teams during one such project.
So let's try to make it a bit more tangible with one of our cases. Educators at the Aalto University in Finland had the idea to merge their entrepreneurial students further in a real-world setting and get them connected to potential investors, creating what they call a Nordic investor pool. In this collaboration setting, the educators arrange meetings with investors for 2 weeks in a row, so students can meet around 10 to 20 investors. Then this way, the students can introduce their idea or business models and see if they can get their first financial contribution or support, which is always what we are looking for entrepreneurship, right? And they directly get feedback and have a real incentive to work on their startup ideas, which is also good, keep the motivation high. And in this setting, the students have a clear role to play, being the potential founders that pitch promising and high quality ideas to a set of real investors. So the educators are facilitating and coaching the students, while the investors are giving real-world feedback and might even find a promising new startup to invest into. For this all to work, of course, the educators clearly have to communicate with all the involved parties, students, investors, and establish ground rules of engagement, managing expectations on all sides. So on the students, they are guaranteed to take something away from it, which it's clear and benefit for them. And even if an idea doesn't get funded, students still have the learning outcome, what they need to solve to be able to get what they expect, and getting to know the right people who can help them later in the future. So if it doesn't work during these 2 weeks, they still could give it a try later on or something if they work further in their ideas, for example.
Yeah, it's a great thing and certainly an innovative idea, right? And I mean, always these the learning outcomes, it's not always about being successful with a pitch or something, but learning how to do it, learning how to approach this, learning how to handle the different persons in this situation. It's really good. And for me, this is a clear example of educators being completely involved in designing and implementing such projects. They attract people from their own network to participate, or even they may look for people that are not part of the network and sell the idea of promising and potential investments.
Exactly, a real-life example that shows us the importance of cooperations and what needs to be done to create a successful collaboration. Now, let's go a bit into the challenges of such collaboration, because, of course, too many people involved, of course, there are friction, there are discussions and challenges. So we already heard the challenges faced by the students in such setting, like time management, resource constraint, lack of or misleading communication. But how about, Dominik, you let our listeners know a bit more about our findings of other challenges?
Sure. So communication across all involved stakeholders was mentioned multiple times in our interviews as well. We just talked about this again, right? So communication. Of course, educators also sometimes struggle with missing motivation and engagement from students, leading to unmet expectations on the side of the cooperation partners. So we talked about the challenges that the students face. This time lag or whatever can lead to missing motivation, and that directly impacts, of course, such a cooperation where it's not only about the education but also about an external partner or another partner. Beyond this, we had multiple mentions of a clash of cultures, which can lead to friction from the sides of academia and industry, or also academia and society. People are, when these worlds are meeting, it can be a bit difficult. And this can also, of course, be the case when crossing disciplinary boundaries. So the example that you already mentioned with engineering and business, people tend to work a little bit differently. People tend to think a little bit differently, and that can be a challenge. One more point I would like to repeat, coming to what we mentioned earlier in regards to the role of the university, is a lack of resources, missing support structures, and resistance to change and innovation within the educational institutions. In many cases, it's individual educators that are initiating cooperation projects based on intrinsic motivations. So they really want to have some impact. They really want to change. And often they have some barriers within their own university, within their own institution. Many interviewees also pointed out that organizations should create specific incentives, such as further resources, special support structures, and also one very, very important thing, recognition to further push cooperative endeavors. The existing literature also states pretty much the same. It indicates that both intellectual and economic incentives can play a significant role as motivators for academics to achieve benefits for the cooperation, through the cooperation, for the institution and for the students, of course. And also for the partners, right? Not only the students benefit, but also the external partners benefit quite nicely.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of things playing together that in the end influence everyone. It's not only one side. And adding to your point of the relevance to bridge organizations, one of our interviewees was the designer and research at an Italian university. She has worked on projects within the university with companies in the creative field. She mentioned that somehow companies in the creative field usually have less structured or methodological approach. Of course, it's creative. Usually they don't have a guideline, right? So of course, the educators needed to interpret the company needs somehow and then try to communicate that to the students in the best way so somehow they still get what they wanted. And the most interesting part of that, at least from my point of view, is that both company and students are given a template for the briefing where they can easily structure their ideas and better communicate what they see in their minds to the other part. So this is a tool or a strategy that they found, okay, how do we align all these different languages that we somehow talk? And of course, thereby the educator facilitates better the communication, ensuring a better cooperation, right?
Yeah, that's a very, very good example of this challenge and how to face that challenge also. Yeah, we also documented the necessity to provide special training to interested and willing educators. Such training and development support for educators should include cooperation methodologies and strategies, but also clear tactics and relevant communication tools and approaches. So, for example, such a template, which is such an easy thing to create and such a helpful tool for everybody that's involved in this cooperation.
Yeah, and in the end made a huge difference for everyone to solve simple communication issue, right?
Exactly.
Okay, great. And now before we conclude today's episode, let's touch upon one thing that can act as a crucial aspect of collaborative projects, the role of technology. So, Dominik, how do you see technology influencing the trajectory of collaborative projects in higher education? And please also share with our audience the suggestions from our interviews, of course.
Yeah, it's a great question again, Maynara. Thank you very much. Well, technology is changing the game of how cooperative projects are being handled, managed, and executed. We've all experienced it in the last couple of years. The advancements in digital communication tools have been tremendous, but also in project management and also in virtual cooperation platforms. Think about Slack, Trello, Zoom. These are just the basics. And geographical barriers are becoming less significant. Students and educators can work together quite seamlessly, even if they are miles apart, taking down another limitation, another barrier. Of course, there are always challenges with this. We've all experienced issues with camera technology not working, microphone being muted, blah, blah, blah. But still, it's such a great enabler. So technology can act as a game changer in the realm also of cooperative projects, enabling previously impossible types of cooperations. However, it's important to ensure that all involved parties are adequately trained to use these technologies effectively. Another set of tools were graphic tools in an online and cooperative setting, such as Canva, enabling easy creation of communication materials. And of course, in the days of ChatGPT, AI tools are on the rise, being implemented and used for educational purposes. There is a bunch of information out there on how to use this, and also in our cases, some have experimented already with how to integrate AI into the cooperation. But of course, as much as technology offers new opportunities, maybe most of all the AI-based tools, it also requires a certain level of digital literacy and know-how. And training programs and workshops are crucial and should become integral parts of the curriculum, and maybe especially for corporations in the beginning of corporations or before a cooperation project, to ensure that both the students and the educators are comfortable using such new tools. This will maximize potential benefits and ensure that the technology actually enhances the cooperative experiences and not really hamper it further or hinder it further, also reaching the learning outcomes that are required or that are expected.
Yeah, absolutely. Embracing technology in cooperation projects like this can undoubtedly lead to more innovative and effective educational experience. But of course, it requires this effort from the education institutions to provide the resources, the training, which we know not always are an easy thing to get and then becomes a barrier and everything that we just talked about.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, it's about the right balance between technology, fostering the human interaction, which is of course also important. And the students mentioned this multiple times, networking, getting to know real life experiences, but also at the end, creativity. And with the right approach, cooperative projects can be a very, very powerful tool in shaping the future of higher education, in further bringing education to the students, and at the same time impacting not only the university, but also society and the industry.
Well said. Exactly. That's everything it's about, right? Cooperating, finding a way to work together. So we are come to the end of our first episode on the Cooperation Education podcast series. So we can say, in conclusion, that collaborative projects are an essential tool to tackle today's challenges and increase quality education. However, there are still some gaps in the system, preventing that these cooperation projects to be really successful and be beneficial for all the parties involved. From support and availability of financial resources, as we mentioned, so the educators have more guidance in these new teaching methods, And there are also the willingness to contribute to these new methodologies and then involving the students, make them stay motivated and contribute and ensure that they have a real life experience that is valuable and really enriching for their careers later on. There are still a lot of things to talk about, but we will do that in the next episodes. So thank you, listeners, for joining us today in our first episode of this limited series. It was about exploring collaborative projects, transforming higher education together. So stay tuned for more. And also thank you, Dominik, so much for joining me today. And it was a great insight so we could discuss all this research we have done. And you're, of course, welcome to come back anytime.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. And to the audience, don't miss the next episodes.
Thank you for tuning in into today's episode. Join us as we continue to explore collaborative projects and their role in the future of higher education. Follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. If you're interested in further materials, check out the show notes of this episode where you will find a link to our project website. We will fill it with further content and resources in the upcoming weeks. Cooperation in Education podcast series, where collaboration meets inspiration.